Go ahead.
Okay. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be taking part in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Samarkand, Tajikistan. Hello, this is Nika Sharma, and with me we have Mr. Ramanan Sengupta, the consulting editor of the Indian Defense Journal, and also Mr. Manish Anand, the strategic affair editor of the Rising Hills. So welcome, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's also, just correct you for a second, it's called Indian Defense Review, which is a strategic magazine.
Okay.
I'm a consulting editor there. But, I should make it clear that whatever I discuss here does not reflect the magazine's viewpoint, because I tend to get a bit overboard sometimes, and they might get,
Yeah.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
So Mr. Sengupta, to begin with you, we see that the summit is much of significance for India. So what all we can expect during the two-day deliberations?
See, Prime Minister Modi is going for the main summits, the actual summit, where I would say that, India's position has become a bit iffy, for want of a better word, simply because, we are the only sort of country which is also very, very sort of, friendly with the US and Western powers as well. And at the same time, we are also in a grouping which, many people are saying that probably India is the only liberal democracy in that grouping. All the other 8 members, if you take a look at them, none of them, Russia might insist that it is, and a few others will also insist that they are. But if you want to take a look at, the sort of countries which are there, right now it's an 8-member grouping which has China. You tell me which one of these is a possible liberal democracy. You have China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, all the stans, Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan, and the latest member to be added is Iran. Okay, so, in fact, a lot of Western countries are telling India, what are you doing in that grouping? Because we're the only liberal democracy there. But the point remains that India has had a very, very long-standing relationship with most of the Central Asian nations from the time they were part of the Soviet Union. A couple of times that I've been to, some of these states, they actually play Raj Kapoor's songs, and they have a strong sort of a relationship with India. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, these Central Asian states, most of them, Uzbekistan, for instance, is, incredibly sort of, friendly towards Indians. They actually, that Shastri, our prime minister, died there. And so every year on his birthday, they actually have a ceremonial salute. They have a statue of him. There's a street called Shastri Street, where the soldiers come and pay homage and all that stuff. So there is that, people-to-people relationship, and we have a lot of other kind of a. Of late, of course, however, things have not been all that. I think the older generation was very, very friendly with us. The younger generation, perhaps not so much, because there are 2 major things here. One is language, because they don't know Indian languages, and we don't know Russian or Uzbek or whatever it is that they speak there. Most of them speak Russian well, but that's still a thing. So coming back to what we can expect from this summit, first of all, given the geopolitical situation right now, we've had Ukraine, we've had the whole Western world ganging up against China and Russia, which is sort of performing a different, different pole, as it were, thing. It's not just these 3 countries. I think the entire world has had to sort of, change their geopolitical strategic thinking. Because if you look at it, Europe is going to suffer this winter simply because they are, aligned with the West. They're going to suffer because they don't have fuel for heating. They don't have fuel for, eventually, people are actually saying, wipe yourself off with the sponge, don't use hot water. Because, you save electricity. Power has gone up from, a thing that would cost you a shop that, for instance, a friend of mine was telling me, a shop where the annual bill was, I think in the UK was 110 pounds. It's now 3,000 pounds. So imagine the difference in terms of just billing. So India has deep connections with Central Asia. India also has a lot of interest in Afghanistan. From the last time that the Taliban were there till 20 years later when they took over last year again, India invested a lot of money, resources, and things in Afghanistan, which once the Taliban came in, it's almost like you lost everything. So the people who still have a lot of direct contact with the Taliban are all these Central Asian states which have borders on the northern end of Afghanistan, and of course Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has always wanted Afghanistan to be a part of its, what it calls a strategic backyard, simply because they know that in any war with India, Pakistan is a rather thin strip of land. So what happens is an Indian plane, a fighter jet, can actually cross over Pakistan, bomb whatever it wants to, and come right back in what, half an hour, 40 minutes. But imagine a Pakistani jet trying to come and bomb, it'll run out of fuel by the time it reaches Calcutta, because it has to cross 3,000 kilometers. So in order to sort of, get a bit more space, as it was, strategic space, Pakistan has always eyed Afghanistan as a place where they could, move their more expensive military assets so that it would make it difficult for Indian planes to attack them or, get to. That is the main reason that they've always eyed Afghanistan. The second reason, of course, is that if Afghanistan was also a hostile neighbor, which it is in some ways, then it's squeezed from both sides. India on one side and Afghanistan on the other. Which is why they sort of, trained the Taliban, sent them to occupy Afghanistan. Taliban, as you know, doesn't have a democratic brief. They just walked in and occupied it. They did that the first time, and they did that again this time, and the moment the Americans left. So India has a problem that they've invested a lot in Afghanistan, and now suddenly they don't have access to all that. All the goodwill that they've built stands for nothing. Whatever they want to do, they have to do through the Taliban. And things are not all that great, even with Taliban assurances. I think on the 5th, there was an attack on the Russian embassy, where 2 Russian diplomats were killed. And this was not done by the Taliban. This was done by the Islamic State, which sees the Taliban as, not Islamic. They're like one of those vicious, That apart, India has also had a lot of interest in Central Asia, which is to the north and which is landlocked, because of, apart from all the friendly ties and whatever that they've had, because of the resources that they have. They have huge amounts of minerals, oils, lithium and stuff like that, which we all need. So India wants a piece of that pie as well. Okay? So that's part of the reason why India has been a member of the SCO. And now with the Prime Minister going there, what the Prime Minister is hoping to achieve is, there are 2 things which I think the Prime Minister will want to stress there. One is, of course, connectivity.
Sure.
Because right now we cannot really connect with Afghanistan by land. I mean, sorry, with even Afghanistan, we can't connect by land. We can't connect with Central Asian republics or by land either. So you either have to go all the way to the north, into Russia and then send things down, or as we do now, we send things to Iran and then it goes by land to Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan it goes up to the Central Asian states, which is a painful process. They are building or trying to build what they call a north-south corridor, which will ease that thing, but I don't see it happening very quickly. They're doing it in bits and pieces. And if you have a corridor where you want to do trade, unless the scale is big, it will cost you a lot of money. So India is going to stress on 2 major things. One is terrorism. That, and we all know where terrorism stems from. It actually starts from Pakistan. Okay. Then I was telling you about planes. Now they've also moved their terrorist outfits into Afghanistan. So the Lashkar-e-Toiba and others, they now have bases all the way in Afghanistan, because now it makes it all the more difficult for India to send in hit squads and try and take them out, as they used to do. I mean, as they did one time, because you'd have to cross all the way across Pakistan, get into another country, which is Afghanistan, and then do this. So
Yeah, Megha, I suppose Ramananda has been disconnected.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
go
sure.
ahead,
So
Can you
go
hear me
ahead.
now?
Yeah,
yes, sir, we can.
yeah.
So I'll give Mr. Sengupta some rest and I'll just switch on to the next question.
Yeah, sure, because I tend to talk a lot.
Your video is not coming, Ram.
Just finish this quickly. The thing
Yeah,
is that
Megha, go ahead.
Okay.
one of the
So
interesting things about India attending this part of thing is that we have two sort of, hostile countries, the leaders of two hostile countries with whom we are having a tough time bilaterally also attending, which is China and Pakistan. Will Prime Minister Modi meet President Xi Jinping of China? I'm not so sure. They're still trying to, figure out whether or not he
yeah,
should.
that's still a mystery to us.
That's one part.
We'll see to that.
Would you like to ask the next question again?
Sure. So it's for Mr. Anand. We would like to understand the backdrop of the Samarkand summit. So what are the expectations of the Western world from
Your
the
voice
PM
is now
Modi?
not.
Okay, Megha, this is an interesting question because when Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of
See if,
India, had gone to
I can-
Germany.
I'll start the video. Is this better now? Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Now the video is better. Ram, let me just finish my answer. Narendra Modi had gone to Germany when during his three European nations tour in the month of May, and afterwards he had attended the G7 summit in Germany. And at that time, we had seen a lot of expectations from the European and the Western countries that India should play some critical role in persuading Russia, particularly Vladimir Putin, to call off his Ukrainian strike. So there is a lot of expectations from India, from the Western world, because China is completely on the side of Russia. Right now, if we see, Turkey is the only country which is having a sort of hapt to mediate with Russia and the Western countries. So in that context, the Western world may expect. So besides that, much of the spotlight, because the BRICS summit had taken place, and the Eastern Cooperation Summit just recently took place, and the world knows that Russia and China, they indulge in rhetorics on such forums
Right.
against the Western world. So in that context, much of the spotlight would be on India, particularly because this is the first in-person a sort of meeting in which Modi would come face to face with Xi Jinping. And since 2020, we have problems on the Eastern Ladakh border. The People's Liberation Army people, military personnel are camping there. We have disturbed border there. And the foreign minister, as Jaishankar, has on multiple occasions said that the India and China relations cannot be normal until there is a stability on the border. So in that
Right.
context, we will have a lot of spotlight on whether Modi, how does Modi, connect with Xi in that forum. What
Right.
Putin will say and what Xi will say, that is very predictable. That is very well known. They will go bashing against the Western world. But indeed, India and Mr. Modi will have two very specific concerns. One is terrorism, and the second is the food and the energy security that he has to,
That's right.
discuss there. So in these aspects, I suppose India will stick to its national interest. Yes, Meika?
Yes, sir.
I agree with you, except that, I am not so sure that this will be a platform for Western bashing as much as a call for more powerful regional grouping. I think that all these leaders getting together,
True.
see, three of them are sworn enemies of the US because Iran has just joined, and so that's the ninth member. So Iran, China, Russia. Okay, so all
Ended.
three are
Ended.
on the radar of the Americans.
Yeah.
So the point
In
here
fact,
is
Ram,
that
I'm reminded of the book, The Great Game, by Peter Hopkirk, the great game that the British, Indian spies and the Russian spies played in this very particular region, where
absolutely.
we protected our interests. The similar sort of, I suppose, history repeats, and history is repeating more intensely these days. Let's hear Mehika. I suppose he has more questions. Yeah,
Yes,
Mehika.
sir. So moving forward, so next up we have Afghanistan and terrorism will obviously be the key focus for the summit, right? So what will India push for this context? So this is for Mr. Sen.
Right. So the main thing you must keep in mind is that Afghanistan, the Taliban has promised all the Western leaders when they came in. I mean, although actually everybody in the world that look, this is a new Taliban, we are the version 2, we're not going to let terrorism work here and stuff like that. But you had Ayman Zawahiri of the Al-Qaeda #2 guy who was, after thing. The Americans went and took him out in the middle of Kabul. Okay. 2, there are a bunch of these small things as well as large outfits like the Islamic State, which are seeing Afghanistan as a safe haven. See, let me take a step back and explain that one of the fundamental things that drives this kind of terrorism is religious fundamentalism. Okay, it's my God is better than your God, and everybody else has to bow to my God kind of nonsense. Okay, if you ask me, it is just a ploy for economic gains. Most of these guys, they might seriously believe that God has told them that go behead everybody else who doesn't believe in me. But I don't think any God in his right mind would tell you that you must kill everybody else who doesn't believe in me. But that's a different thing. But religious extremism is the main cause for the terrorism that we see today. And what has happened is the Taliban says that we are the sort of spokespeople for God. The Al-Qaeda says that we are the people who God will trust. And the Islamic State says, no, you guys are nothing. We are the people. Each trying to be more orthodox than the other. See, so they don't get along too well, but they all have the same objective. They want the Islamic, caliphate worldwide. They want the entire world to come under Islam. That's their broader objective. But internally, each one of them is trying to outdo the other. The Islamic State says, you Taliban guys, you are nothing. You are, you're all sucking up to Russia and the US and all those things. You can't do anything. Al-Qaeda used to say, oh, the Islamic State, they're nothing. We are the real sort of believers. Now, all this also happens because I would say education. The moment a lot of people realize that there is a world beyond, just what God said, I think it will become increasingly difficult for you to mobilize people to your cause. Unfortunately, you cannot do that with force. See, if I go and launch a missile on Iraq or Afghanistan or something, even if the local people who are being hit by that missile believe that somebody misrepresented us, but at the end of the day, it's my brother, my sister, my mother who's being killed, and who's killed them? The Americans or Indians or whoever. So I'm going to find a way to take revenge. So force sort of begets force. You're basically driving more people into terrorism. You need to be able to sort of educate people, explain to them that look, you have a point of view, but let's not behead people just because they disagree with you. There are better ways to argue, to do things. Now that can't happen overnight. It takes a lot of discussion, a lot of talk, a lot of other things, and even at the end of that, it might not happen because they'll say, no, my God still is better than your God.
Indeed, Ram, much efforts have taken place. In fact, Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, had gone, and the national security advisor Ajit Doval also had gone, and
That's
both
right.
of them have stressed in their meetings at the SCO that the group should have a collective effort to counter terrorism. But Mehika, what is more interesting is that China has blocked a couple of resolutions at the United Nations in designating some of the big terrorists, which India and America wanted to push at that forum. So, and the SCO's principal mandate basically is countering terrorism only, isn't it, Ram?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It was started off as a sort of a anti terrorism and anti what they call grouping
Main
people
focus was
under
on terrorism, right?
yeah. So yes, China has been blocking the designation of Pakistani terrorist groups. mostly those that target India. Okay, but you tell them that, some terrorist has gone to Xinjiang and done something, that you're more than happy to label that guy a terrorist. Okay, so there is a hypocrisy there. But what India is looking for here is connectivity with Central Asia, which is very difficult to do right now because you either have to go across Pakistan, which has been refusing it for so long. Okay, because we've been asking Pakistan, and in fact, all the other Central Asian countries too have been asking Pakistan that if you allow us, we will build an oil pipeline that comes across the land, right across Afghanistan, across Pakistan, and to India. And probably from India, it could actually extend into Southeast Asia if they really planned it that way. Because that could save you the trouble of shipping it, having to take it all the way to thing. But Pakistan has constantly been refusing it, saying that no, we don't want anything from our soil. They recently, there was this nonsense about we will not accept tomatoes from Iran because those are Shia tomatoes. I'd rather starve than buy food from Iran. So it's religious, thing has reached the pits. And the only way, I think, you can't beat them into submission, because that will only make them even more sort of, you have to try and tell them that there is a better way, that I'm willing to listen to you, but you're not willing to listen to me. That is a problem. So, however, even when it comes to connectivity, we have a problem. Most of these Central Asian states have signed on for the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the Chinese project, which means a lot of infrastructure projects there, roads, rail and all that stuff are being built by the Chinese. Okay, now, if India wants to go there and say that we also want access to infrastructure, either they will have to use the Chinese infrastructure, in which case Chinese will say, oh, you're also part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, and we vehemently oppose the Belt and Road Initiative because we say that it crosses through Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and hence it's a violation of our sovereignty. So that's the problem.
Ram, but the nature's fury in Pakistan has given a big blow to the road and belt initiative of China.
It's actually been a good thing for China, because they will still insist that Pakistan has to pay me my money for having built it.
True.
So what if
yes.
demolished?
That's
Yes,
Sri Lanka has learned in a very bad way.
So with that only, will there any be changes for PM Modi to have a bilateral meeting with the newly elected Pakistani PM, Mr. Sharif? Do you think?
Yes, but let me explain something else that's been happening in the context of, earlier when we had SARC, it was the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation.
Right.
Yeah, Association for Regional Cooperation. What the problem there was, that every time they would have a summit, it would become an India-Pakistan sparring platform. All the other people were ignored. The rest of the world would come and say, oh, did the two leaders shake hands, or did they sort of glare at each other? Did they? Everybody else was ignored. And the whole thing fell apart. SARC is dead in the water, if you ask me. Okay. India is very keen this time not to let bilateral issues impact its multilateral issues. Okay, we might have a huge problem with China, but that we see it as a bilateral issue. We don't want Americans to come and tell us how to deal with it, or even Russia to come and tell us how to deal with it. We are saying that we are like big people, we can resolve it ourselves. Okay? Even that goes for the India-Pakistan thing as well. Because bringing in a third party, whatever decision it takes, the other party will say, oh, you guys are biased or prejudiced or whatever it is. It just messes things up more. If the decision, whatever is taken, is bound to impact somebody, right? It will always be a winner and a loser. So the loser will always say that, the guy who's deciding is biased. So India always insists that the problems we have are bilateral. But we have huge problems with China. We have major problems with Pakistan. But we're not going to let that impact our relationship with the SCO just because they are also members there. We might at best avoid getting into a huddle with them, give them a very cold handshake, or, sneer and walk away if somebody's walking towards us, political rebuff, but we're not going to go there and start fighting with them. because this is a much bigger platform. It is not just about India and Pakistan or India and China. And
Right.
this is the policy decision that we have taken. We are not going to let our bilateral issues impact our multilateral initiatives, which I think is a very positive thing, if you ask me.
So, Mr. Anand, what is your take on that?
Indeed, this is what Ram has said is indeed true. But I would just like to remind Ram that Narendra Modi had a very good relationship with Nawaz Sharif. And the last visit of Modi to Pakistan was in the times of a marriage function in the Nawaz Sharif family. And now his brother is back as the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And
Yes.
you must have heard that the Pakistan finance minister recently had made a claim that the Pakistan should reopen its trade relations with India. The way the flash floods have ravaged Pakistan, almost one third of the country is badly ravaged by the floods. $10 billion of loss has been estimated in Pakistan. They are seeking bailouts from the IMF. They have apparently secured about $1 billion of the bailout from the IMF, but that is not enough. And but there are a lot of issues in the Pakistani military establishment. The way Imran Khan is bashing one section of the Pakistani military. So I think Pakistani politics currently is in fluid, and you never know the way Ajit Doval has been outreaching in the SCO forum. There must have been some back channel happening, and the way India has opened its technical consulate in Afghanistan. So
Right.
politics always surprises you, and international relations also has its own dimension of Pakistan, isn't it, Ram?
I agree with you, except that I would not write off the Pakistani army just yet. And the problem is that the Pakistani army, in order to justify its sort of preeminence in the country, has to have a bogeyman, and in this case is India. That unless we are in power and unless we protect you, India will come and run us over and occupy us. And I'm sad to say that we have politicians in India who keep talking about silly things like Akhand Bharat and all that nonsense. The Pakistani army uses that, saying that, look, see, if we don't protect you, India will come and occupy you. Okay, every time some prime minister has made a move to, put out an olive branch to India, there's been a terrorist attack, there's been, some attempt at sabotage by the army. Because they know that the moment there is peace between these two guys, we will not have the authority to say that I want more money for this, and I want more money for missiles, and I want more tanks. Okay, so that is the conundrum that we need to bring.
Definitely. Meka, you just have a few minutes left.
Right off the army.
Yes, we are running short on time, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell
If
me.
you have
Yes,
more
I'll just
important
conclude.
question, you ask.
I think so. We're good to
Right.
go. Okay. So that was all we had for today's special discussion. And we will be back soon with another discussion with experts on another topic. So thank you, Mr. Sen, for your time, and Mr. Anand for sharing your thoughts. Do share your feedback and also like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Meka.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.